Featuring everyone's favorite prehistoric squirrel, Ice Age Scrat's Nutty Adventure is a collection platformer released in 2019, only 3 years after the final Blue Sky produced film, in this nearly 22-year-old franchise. But does a game published by the family-friendly focused Outright Games manage to capture the charm of Ice Age's most impactful character? Well, we'll find out here on Kid Game Breakdown. First of all, let me say that the music of this game is way better than it has any right to be. While it may only be a few tracks, it's actually pretty decent and feels like something straight from some of the movies. It's just a shame that the title screen is fairly bland. But from there, we can access the main menu, where we have the option to continue or start a new game, a fairly bare bones options menu, and extra, where you can unlock concept art with the gems that you've collected by playing the game. Entering a new game, we're introduced to our protagonist, Scrat, in a cutscene. Once we get to the game proper, we then explore through semi-open world levels and collect gems, statues, and tablet pieces until we meet the next level. I'll admit that the world looks pretty decent, though not quite what I would expect from a game this late in the 8th generation of consoles. I actually found the levels quite charming, though the game does have a few issues. The first being the camera. You and the game will fight over it through the majority. While it largely works in your favor, there are times that the camera will swing in awkward angles. This will change the direction that you'll have to press in order to get Scrat moving in the right direction, depending on the situation. Another is combat, and yeah, it really does feel as bad as it looks. It's just so loose, it often doesn't feel like you're actually fighting opponents, as opposed to just wildly flailing around and getting lucky hits. It can also be difficult to tell when you're hit. While Scrat does flash, it can be hard to see, especially in a crowd of enemies, and especially when the camera isn't playing ball. However, the looseness of the movement does actually play pretty well in the platforming segments, which is the largest and the most enjoyable part of the game. It's very fluid and doesn't hold your hand as much as you would expect, especially from a kid game. I basically had to figure out some of the mechanics myself through the experience I've had with previous games. There were times that I felt that I should have been able to achieve a jump, only to later realize that I had accidentally recreated the notorious Cuphead incident. But at other times, it seemed like I actually got a new ability that the game neglected to tell me about. So it is questionable if it's actually bad design or just a skill issue. But overall, is it worth playing as an adult? Unfortunately, it's not. This is largely because there are other games that do what this game does better. While I liked most of the platforming and had some fun on the boss fights, the majority of the time I was thinking that I would rather be playing Spyro, which not only has more interesting platforming, but has more enjoyable combat overall. There's also a lot of backtracking, especially if you want to 100% the game, and they're just simply better games to be spending your time on. I also think that it's not great for a kid either. While I liked how little it held my hand, it could be difficult for less experienced players to get the most out of the game, especially with the lack of voice work to keep them entertained or informed if they ignore the text like I would have as a kid. The slapstick comedy with Scrat might pick up some of the slack, and I wouldn't say that it's all that bad of a game, so it might be an adequate game if they've already played similar titles, but at $30, I would suggest that you get Spyro Reignited Trilogy for a $10 increase over this game, especially if they haven't played that game before. But let me know what you think down in the comments below, check out my last video on the Disney Afternoon Collection, and consider subscribing. Until then, this has been Rob the Slob, and I'll see you in the virtual community.